You know the feeling before you even walk into the room. It starts in your shoulders, tight and heavy, like you are already bracing for impact. Your mind runs through the possibilities, searching for the right words, the right tone, the right expression that might keep things calm. You have spent so much energy trying to predict the unpredictable, trying to manage emotions that were never yours to carry. When you look back at the years you gave, the patience you offered, the explanations you repeated until your voice went quiet, it is easy to feel exhausted. Not just tired in your body, but tired in your spirit. You gave your attention, your empathy, and your loyalty, and somehow it was never enough. You were told you were too sensitive, too demanding, or too difficult, even when you were just asking for basic respect. That confusion is real, and it matters. You are not imagining it. You are not losing your mind. You are simply waking up to a reality that was carefully blurred for you. The first truth you need to hold on to is simple. You were not the problem. You were placed in a system where the rules shifted whenever it became convenient, where accountability flowed in only one direction, and where your stability was treated as a threat to someone else's control. This was not a normal relationship dynamic. It was an imbalance dressed up as love, packaged as partnership, and sustained through quiet manipulation. You tried to fix it with communication, with compromise, with more effort. That is what good people do. But effort cannot repair a structure that was never built to hold you safely. The confusion you felt was not a failure of your understanding. It was the intended result of a pattern designed to keep you questioning yourself instead of questioning what was actually happening. What you experienced follows a clear psychological structure. It moves between chaos and control, not as accidents, but as necessary components of emotional dependency. When someone needs to feel secure in a relationship, they usually build that security through consistency and mutual trust. When someone needs to feel secure through control, they build it through unpredictability. Chaos creates anxiety. Anxiety creates compliance, and compliance creates the illusion of safety for the person who caused the anxiety in the first place. This is not about gender, and it is not about who loved more. It is about how certain personalities manage their own internal instability by externalizing it onto the people closest to them. You became the emotional regulator for someone who refused to regulate themselves. That is an impossible job. It was never meant for you to carry. Look at the chaos phase. It usually shows up as sudden mood shifts, unexplained coldness, or intense reactions to small things. Conversations that should have been simple turn into interrogations. You find yourself apologizing for things you did not do, defending your tone, or backtracking your own words just to restore peace. The reason this happens is straightforward. Instability keeps you focused on the present crisis instead of reflecting on the broader pattern. When you are constantly managing emotional emergencies, you do not have the mental space to step back and evaluate whether the relationship is healthy. You are kept in a state of hypervigilance, scanning for danger, adjusting your behavior to avoid triggering another storm. Over time, this rewires your nervous system. You stop trusting your own judgment because you were repeatedly told your judgment was wrong. You begin to believe that if you just try harder, listen better, or explain yourself more clearly, the chaos will finally stop. But chaos is not a mistake. It is a mechanism. It works exactly as designed. Then comes the control phase. Once the chaos has worn you down, control steps in to restore order, but only on their terms. This looks like rewriting history, where past arguments are flipped until you are the one who caused the damage. It looks like subtle isolation, where your friendships, hobbies, or independent decisions are criticized until you quietly step away from them. It looks like boundary testing, where every line you draw is met with resistance, guilt, or silent punishment until you withdraw it. The psychology here is about maintaining dominance without appearing overtly aggressive. Control is rarely announced. It is negotiated through exhaustion. You are worn down until compliance feels easier than conflict. The effect on you is a slow erosion of self-trust. You stop voicing your needs because they are treated as complaints. You stop sharing your wins because they are minimized or redirected. You start making yourself smaller, not out of weakness, but out of survival. You learned that taking up space meant inviting correction, so you folded inward. That is not a character flaw. That is a logical response to an illogical environment. It is important to say this clearly. You were not too emotional. You were reacting to emotional manipulation. You were not difficult to love. You were loved conditionally. And conditions that require you to abandon yourself are not love. They are transactions. You kept showing up because you believed the relationship could be fixed through your sincerity. But sincerity cannot override a pattern that depends on your self-doubt to survive. The truth you are beginning to see is that the problem was never your inability to communicate well enough. The problem was that clear communication threatens a system built on ambiguity. When you start speaking plainly, when you stop over-explaining, when you stop absorbing blame that does not belong to you, the entire structure loses its grip. That is why resistance increases when you start gaining clarity. It is not because you are becoming colder. It is because you are becoming visible. And visibility breaks the illusion. Recognizing the pattern is the first step towards stepping out of it. You do not need to argue with the reality anymore. You just need to observe it. Notice how conversations spiral when you state a simple preference. Notice how accountability is deflected through deflection, victimhood, or sudden anger. Notice how peace only exists when you suppress your own needs. These are not isolated incidents. They are data points. When you collect enough of them, the picture becomes undeniable. You stop asking why this keeps happening, and you start acknowledging that it keeps happening because it is allowed to. Allowing it does not mean you are weak. It means you are waiting for the truth to become too loud to ignore. Now that you hear it, you can stop negotiating with it. You can stop trying to earn basic decency through endurance. You can stop treating emotional exhaustion as proof of your loyalty. Stepping back emotionally does not require anger. It requires distance. You do not need to announce your departure or prove your independence through conflict. You simply need to stop participating in the cycle. This means you stop defending yourself against accusations that are designed to drain you. You stop trying to make them see your side, because people who benefit from your confusion will never choose clarity. You stop measuring your worth by their approval, because approval given conditionally will always be taken back conditionally. Emotional detachment is not indifference. It is self-protection. It is the quiet decision to stop pouring your energy into a dynamic that only returns it as doubt. When you remove your emotional investment from the chaos loses its fuel. You are no longer the battery. You are the observer. And observation brings power. This is where boundaries enter, not as weapons, but as architecture. A boundary is not a threat. It is a statement of what you will tolerate and what you will walk away from. It is calm, specific, and consistent. You do not need to explain your boundaries repeatedly. You do not need to justify them to someone who has already shown they will not respect them. You simply state them, and you enforce them through action. If a conversation turns into verbal manipulation, you end it. If your time is treated as optional while yours is demanded, you decline. If your honesty is met with distortion, you stop sharing it. Boundaries are not about changing their behavior. They are about protecting your peace. People who are used to crossing lines will test them. That is not a sign that boundaries do not work. It is proof that they are necessary. Testing happens because control depends on compliance. When compliance stops, testing begins. Your job is not to argue during the test. Your job is to hold the line quietly and consistently. Calm detachment is the foundation of self-respect. You do not need to match intensity with intensity. You do not need to prove your point by raising your voice. You prove your point by refusing to participate in what harms you. When someone reacts to your boundary with guilt, anger, or silence, you do not rush to fix their discomfort. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Their reaction is information. It tells you exactly how much they value your presence versus your compliance. You already know the answer. You have always known it. The difference now is that you are finally trusting yourself enough to act on it. Self-respect grows in the space between impulse and response. It grows when you pause before answering, when you choose stillness over justification, when you let silence do the work that words used to do. You are not withdrawing love. You are withdrawing access to your energy. That is a healthy distinction. Healing begins when you stop waiting for closure from the person who caused the wound. Closure is not something they give you. It is something you build through consistent choices. It is built in the mornings when you wake up and decide not to replay old arguments in your head. It is built in the conversations you decline, the messages you leave unread, the invitations you politely decline without guilt. It is built when you stop checking for signs that they are changing and start paying attention to the signs that you are healing. The nervous system that learned to brace for impact will take time to relax. That is normal. You are rewiring years of conditioning. You are teaching your body that safety does not require constant monitoring. You are allowing yourself to exist without walking on glass. This process is quiet. It does not announce itself with dramatic breakthroughs. It shows up in the small moments, when you realize you no longer feel the urge to explain yourself, when you feel relief instead of panic, when you choose your peace over being understood. Moving forward does not require you to hate what happened. It requires you to outgrow it. You can acknowledge the pain without letting it define your future. You can recognize the manipulation without carrying bitterness. Bitterness is just another form of attachment. It keeps you emotionally tied to the very dynamic you are trying to leave behind. True freedom looks like neutrality. It means looking at the past with clear eyes, naming what happened without dramatizing it, and turning your attention toward what actually serves you. You start rebuilding your life around consistency, not chaos. You surround yourself with people who respect quiet boundaries. You learn to trust your own pace. You stop measuring your progress by how far you have moved from them, and start measuring it by how close you have moved to yourself. The woman who relied on chaos to maintain control did not create the pattern out of strength. She created it out of fear. Fear of being seen clearly, fear of losing leverage, fear of facing her own instability without an emotional buffer. That is not your burden to carry anymore. You were never asked to fix it. You were only asked to endure it. And you have endured enough. You have paid the emotional toll in full. There is nothing left to prove. You do not need to show them you are fine. You do not need to demonstrate your independence for an audience that is committed to misunderstanding you. You simply need to live it. Quietly, steadily, without apology. The path from chaos to control is not about controlling them. It is about controlling your response. It is about reclaiming your attention, your time, your emotional energy, and your right to exist without negotiation. You will not lose yourself in this process. You will find yourself. The version of you that was compressed to fit their narrative will slowly expand back into the space you were always meant to occupy. You will notice your thoughts clearing. You will notice your breathing deepening. You will notice that you no longer feel responsible for managing someone else's emotional weather. That is not isolation. That is sovereignty. You are allowed to close the door. You are allowed to stop answering questions designed to trap you. You are allowed to choose peace over proximity. You are allowed to walk away from relationships that require your diminishment as the price of admission. Healing is not a single moment. It is a series of small, consistent decisions. It is choosing rest over rumination. It is choosing truth over convenience. It is choosing your own company over toxic familiarity. You will have days where the old patterns feel loud, and that is fine. Noise loses its power when you stop giving it attention. You simply continue. You keep your boundaries intact. You keep your energy directed toward your own life. You let time do what force never could. The chaos will fade, not because you fought it, but because you stopped feeding it. The control will dissolve, not because you took it from them, but because you reclaimed it for yourself. You were never meant to survive on crumbs of respect. You were meant to build a life where respect is the baseline, not the exception. You have already done the hardest part. You saw the pattern. You named it. You stopped blaming yourself for a game you were never meant to win. Now you get to step out of the arena. You get to leave the scoreboard behind. You get to live without keeping track of who owes what, who said what, who failed whom. You get to exist in a reality where your worth is not up for debate, where your boundaries are not treated as challenges, where your peace is not conditional on someone else's mood. That reality is available to you right now. It starts the moment you decide that you are done negotiating your dignity. It continues every time you choose clarity over confusion, stillness over reaction, and yourself over survival. You have carried enough. You have endured enough. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to move forward. And you are allowed to do it quietly, calmly, and completely on your own terms.